2 days before my daughter's wedding, I stopped by the boutique to pick up the evening gown I would wear as the mother of the bride. The shop owner pulled me aside and whispered, "Don't say anything. Just listen." I was completely confused and had no idea what was happening. Then I heard familiar voices, along with the cruel plan they were discussing. I was so shocked I could barely breathe. I'm really grateful you're here with me. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? I love seeing how far these stories travel. And just a quick note, some elements in this story are dramatized for storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to real names or places is purely coincidental, but I hope the message gives you something to think about. The bell above the door chimed softly when I stepped into Whitmore's boutique. The air smelled faintly of lavender and expensive fabric, the kind of place where Greenwich women had been buying their gowns for 40 years. Rebecca Williams, the owner, had fitted my wedding dress in 1983. She'd done the same for Rachel's gown 3 months ago. Today I was picking up my mother of the bride dress, champagne gold. The wedding was Saturday, just 2 days away. Catherine. Rebecca appeared from behind a rack of evening gowns, her face tight. She was 60 like me, silver-haired and normally composed. Today her hands were trembling. "Is everything all right?" I asked. She glanced toward the front windows. "We need to talk. Now." Before I could respond, she locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed. She took my elbow and guided me past the fitting rooms to a door I'd never noticed, tucked behind a display of Italian scarves. A VIP room. She pulled me inside and locked the door. "Rebecca, what?" "Shh." She turned off the light. The room went dark except for a sliver of gold beneath the door. "Listen," she whispered. I held my breath. Voices, muffled but close, coming from the other side of the wall. A man's voice, smooth, confident. "The power of attorney amendment is on page 7. She'll sign it Saturday night after the first dance. She won't even read it." I froze. A woman's voice, younger, hesitant. "Are you sure this is the only way?" "Rachel." The man again, Derek, my future son-in-law. "She trusts you," he said. "That's what makes it perfect." Another voice, clinical, measured. "I've documented 5 incidents of cognitive decline over the past 3 months. Once the power of attorney activates, we can initiate the transfer within 72 hours. Dr. James Caldwell, our family neurologist, the man I'd trusted for 5 years. Rachel's voice again, and the trust. Derek. The Thomas Morrison Memorial Trust. $15 million. The moment she's declared incompetent, you become sole trustee. Combined with the company transfer to Cascade Holdings, $47 million total. The room tilted. Dr. Caldwell. Assisted living placement within 3 to 6 months. Evergreen Manor is very discreet. Rebecca's hand found mine in the dark and squeezed hard. I bit down on the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. They were talking about me. My daughter, my doctor, the man who was supposed to marry her. They were planning to take everything. The voices continued something about timing, about signatures, and then I heard chairs scraping, footsteps, a door closing, silence. Rebecca turned on the light. Her eyes were wet. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "They were here last Thursday, June 8th. Same conversation. I didn't know if I should." "It's all right." My voice came out steady. "Where's my dress?" She blinked. "What?" "The champagne gold dress." She disappeared into the back and returned with a garment bag. I took it, looped it over my arm. "Thank you," I said. "Catherine, what are you going to do?" I looked at her, this woman who'd known me for nearly 40 years, who just saved me from walking blindly into a trap. "I don't know yet." I walked out into the June sunlight. The street was busy, tourists, couples, a man walking a golden retriever. Everyone looked normal, happy. I crossed to my car and opened the back door. I laid the garment bag carefully across the seat. Then I climbed into the driver's seat. I closed the door. The dress hung in the back like a ghost. I stared at it in the rearview mirror. Saturday, 2 days from now. Rachel would walk down the aisle. Derek would smile. I would give my toast about love and trust, and then they would hand me papers. I would sign. By Monday, I would lose everything Thomas and I had built. $47 million. My company, my legacy, my freedom. I didn't start the engine, I didn't cry. I just sat there in the quiet and let the truth settle over me. My daughter was going to betray me, and I had 48 hours to stop her. My hands rested on the steering wheel, but my mind was 15 years away. 15 years since Thomas died. 15 years since everything changed. June 10th, 2009. A heart attack in his office. He was 52, born in 1957, married me when I was 19 and he was 26. I was 45 when I lost him. Rachel had just turned 20, home from college for the summer. The funeral was small. I stood at his grave with Rachel beside me and made a promise. We'll survive this. The company was drowning, $800,000 in debt. Clients were leaving. Everyone told me to sell. I didn't. I worked 80-hour weeks, renegotiated contracts, rebuilt from nothing. Rachel graduated and came home, started at the bottom, entry-level analyst. No special treatment. By 2014, we'd climbed out. Revenue hit $12 million. By 2019, $25 million. Rachel had worked her way to vice president of operations. She was brilliant, everything I'd hoped she'd become. That year, Harrison Fletcher proposed. He was an architect, kind, patient. We'd known each other for years through business circles. He said he'd been in love with me for 3 years. I said no. Rachel was furious. Mom, you deserve to be happy. You gave up everything for this company. I told her I was happy. I had her. I had Morrison Strategic. I had Thomas's legacy. In 2020, I promoted Rachel to Chief Operating Officer. She was 31 young, but she'd earned it. 11 years of proving herself. George Matthews, our senior vice president, raised an eyebrow when I announced it. She's ready, I told him. She was. Then Derek Pierce arrived. January 2022. Rachel brought him to a board meeting, a consultant reviewing our financial strategy. Yale MBA, 12 years at a competitor firm. Polished, charming, smart enough to impress George. By March, I'd hired him as CFO. By June, he and Rachel were dating. By December, engaged. I didn't see the red flags, the small comments. Catherine, maybe it's time to step back. The suggestions, let Rachel handle that. The way he'd touch Rachel's shoulder when I spoke like he was protecting her. From what? From me. The gaslighting started slowly. November, a board meeting. I was presenting Q3 projections when Rachel interrupted. Mom, you already said that 2 minutes ago. I blinked. I did. She glanced at Derek. Are you feeling okay? I looked at my notes. Had I repeated myself, I couldn't remember. George frowned but said nothing. January. I forgot a client's name mid-conversation. Rachel corrected me gently. Derek's expression was pitying. Maybe you should see Dr. Caldwell, he said. Just to be safe. March. I arrived 15 minutes late to a meeting my assistant had written the wrong time. Rachel covered, but Derek pulled me aside afterward. Catherine, this isn't like you. Have you thought about stepping back? I told him I was fine, but the seed was planted. I started second-guessing myself, checking my calendar twice, writing everything down, wondering if I was slipping, if the years were catching up, if Thomas's death had taken more than I'd realized. And Derek was there, supportive, concerned, slowly isolating Rachel, slowly planting doubt, slowly building the case that I was no longer capable. I hadn't known why until today. A car horn jolted me back. My hands were still on the steering wheel, the dress bag still in the back seat. I started the engine. Morrison Estate sat at the end of a tree-lined drive, a pale yellow Victorian we'd bought in 1995 when the company first turned a profit. Thomas had loved it, said it looked like something from a novel. I pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. The house stared back. 2 stories, wraparound porch, the oak tree Thomas planted the year Rachel was born. $47 million. That's what they thought I was worth. My company, my trust, my freedom, everything Thomas and I had built. Everything I'd sacrificed 15 years to protect. I will not let them take it, I whispered. I will not let them take anything. I stepped out of the car. The June air was warm, but I felt cold. I walked toward the front door. Rosa Mendez was setting the dinner table when I stepped through the door. She'd been our housekeeper for 20 years since Rachel was 15 and Thomas was still alive. Miss Catherine, you're home. Did you get the dress? I held up the garment bag and forced a smile. Perfect fit. I set my purse down and walked into the living room. The seating chart for the reception was spread across the coffee table, little place cards in neat rows. Table 12, Dr. Caldwell. I pulled out my phone and texted Rachel. Can't wait for Saturday, sweetheart. Love you. I added a heart. 3 dots appeared. Then, me too, Mom. I love you. I read it twice. Love. What a strange word for what was happening. I reviewed the seating chart, smiled when Rosa walked past, asked if she needed help, pretended my world hadn't just collapsed an hour ago. At 6 o'clock, my phone buzzed. George Matthews. Catherine, can we talk something odd with the Q2 financials? Derek's signature on transfers I don't recognize. George was careful, methodical. If he'd noticed something, it was real. I typed back, tomorrow, keep it quiet. At 6:30, I walked into Thomas's old study and opened a private browser. Power of Attorney Elder Abuse, Connecticut. The results made me sick. Financial exploitation, fraudulent guardianship, forced institutionalization. It happened to people who thought they were safe. People like me. I grabbed my purse. Rosa appeared in the hallway. Miss Catherine Dinner's almost... I have to run an errand. Don't wait for me. I was in the car before she could ask questions. Sarah Goldman's office was in downtown Stamford, a glass tower near the courthouse. I'd been using her for 8 years. Corporate contracts, mergers. Tonight I needed something else. Her assistant had left, but Sarah was still there. She met me at the elevator, immediately concerned. Catherine, what's wrong? I showed her the photo Rebecca had sent the power of attorney document. Where did you get this? A friend. Can we talk? She led me to her office. Sarah pulled up the photo on her computer and zoomed in on page 7. Emergency Health Proxy Amendment. She read, in the event of cognitive impairment as certified by a licensed physician, all corporate voting rights, fiduciary control, and trust administration transfer immediately to Rachel Morrison, acting CEO with full authority to execute sales mergers, asset liquidations, or corporate dissolutions without further consent or oversight. She looked up. This isn't a gift, it's a trap. I know. If you sign this Saturday and Dr. Caldwell files his assessment Monday, you lose everything by Wednesday. Can we stop it? Yes, emergency injunction to freeze transfers, independent cognitive evaluation, evidence of fraud, but we need to move fast. How much time? 48 hours. I closed my eyes. There's something else I said. George Matthews noticed irregularities in our financials. Derek's signature on transfers he doesn't recognize. Sarah leaned forward. That's evidence. But we need more. We need to know what they're planning to do with the money. How? She pulled a business card from her desk drawer. David Reyes, ex-FBI, specializes in financial fraud. If there's a trail, he'll find it. I picked up the card, just a name and a phone number. Can we trust him? I've used him 3 times. He's discreet and he's fast. I stood. Thank you. She walked me to the elevator. Catherine, if you expose them, there's no going back. Rachel, I know. The doors opened. I stepped inside. I sat in my car in the parking garage and stared at the card. 48 hours to save everything. 48 hours to stop my daughter from destroying me. I dialed the number. 2 rings. Reyes. His voice was low, steady, the kind of voice that didn't flinch. I took a breath. My name is Catherine Morrison. I need to hire you tonight. David Reyes sat across from me in a vinyl booth, a cup of black coffee untouched in front of him. 62, silver-haired, eyes that didn't blink when you told them something impossible. The diner on Route 1 was nearly empty. 9 o'clock Thursday night. David pulled a notebook from his jacket. No phone, no recorder, just paper and a pen. Start from the beginning, he said. I told him everything. The boutique, the voices through the wall, Derek, Dr. Caldwell, the power of attorney. Page 7, $47 million. Saturday night, assisted living by Christmas. He didn't interrupt, just wrote in clean, efficient lines. When I finished, he looked up. Can you find proof? I asked. I can find anything. Question is, how much do you want to know? Everything. He nodded. Your daughter. You think she's being manipulated or part of it? I hesitated. I don't know. That's honest. He flipped a page. I'll need access, bank records, company financials, background on Derek Pierce, Dr. Caldwell's contact information. George Matthews can get you the financials quietly. He's our senior VP. He texted me tonight Derek's signature on transfers he doesn't recognize. David made a note. Good, that's a thread. I have Derek's resume. Yale MBA. 12 years at Whitman and Associates. I'll verify it. He paused. The doctor. How long have you been seeing him? 5 years. He treated my husband before he died. David set down his pen. Your husband, Thomas Morrison. Yes. I knew him. The words hung in the air. I stared. What? 2005. I was investigating a Ponzi scheme targeting small consulting firms. My supervisor wanted to drop it, not high profile enough. Thomas came forward, testified, gave us documentation, emails, everything we needed. He saved the case. He saved my career. My throat tightened. I didn't know. He wouldn't have told you. That was Thomas. He didn't do it for recognition. I closed my eyes. 7 years after his death, Thomas was still protecting me. I owed him, David said quietly. Never got the chance to pay him back? I looked at him. You can now. He nodded once. That's the plan. David slid a business card across the table. His handwriting, Morrison Estate, 2 p.m. Friday. I need 16 hours. Meet me tomorrow at your house. Bring your lawyer. What are you looking for? 3 things, each one worse than the last. Tell me. Not yet, but if I'm right, Derek Pierce isn't the kind of man your daughter should be marrying. A chill ran down my spine. Can you stop this? Depends on what I find and what you're willing to do with it. Anything. He studied me, then stood and dropped a 20 on the table. Go home, try to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long. I didn't sleep. I drove home in a daze. The house was dark. I climbed the stairs and lay on top of the covers, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. 3 things, each one worse than the last. What had Derek done? The hours crawled. Midnight, 1, 2. At some point, I closed my eyes. When my phone buzzed, dawn was breaking. 5:47 a.m. A text from an unknown number. David. Found the shell company, Cascade Holdings, LLC. Offshore accounts. This is bigger than you think. I sat up, heart pounding. Cascade Holdings. The name Derek had said through the wall. David had found it in less than 9 hours. I stared at the message. Bigger than I thought. How much worse could it get? David Reyes arrived at 2 o'clock sharp carrying a leather briefcase. Sarah Goldman was already in my study. George Matthews sat beside her 65 gray-haired Thomas's college roommate and our senior vice president for 20 years. David set the briefcase on my desk and pulled out 3 folders. Red, blue, black. Start with the red one, he said. I opened it. Folder 1 red. A photograph. Derek Pierce shaking hands with a man in a dark suit. Manhattan Street corner, April 24th. Dmitry Volkov, David said. Enforcer for Viktor Kozlov. Russian organized crime operating out of New York and New Jersey. I looked up. What does Derek owe him? $2.5 million. The room went quiet. Derek's been gambling since 2020. Illegal poker games. Sports betting. He's in deep. David pulled out a bank statement. March 15th, 2024. A wire transfer. $300,000 from Derek's personal account to an offshore entity in the Cayman Islands. That was a payment, David said. Not enough to clear the debt, just enough to buy time. He laid out 2 more photographs. Derek and Dmitry, different locations. May 8th, June 3rd. Then a text message. Screenshot. Dmitry's number. June 30 deadline, no extensions. If Derek doesn't pay by June 30th, David said quietly, he won't see July. I stared at the photos. My future son-in-law, shaking hands with a man who would have him eliminated. So he's stealing my company, I said, to pay off the mob. David nodded. Folder 2 blue. Cascade Holdings, LLC, David said. Formed March 10th, 2024, Delaware registration. 2 partners, Derek Pierce and Rachel Morrison. My stomach dropped. He pulled out an email, printed, highlighted. From Derek Pierce to Martin Blackwell, CEO Stratton Advisory Subject, Morrison Client List plus Q1 Financials date, April 14th, 2024. Files attached. Remaining data available upon acquisition confirmation. Wire $500,000 to Cascade Holdings account per our agreement. I couldn't breathe. Derek sold our client list. David said. And your financials to your competitor for $500,000. George leaned forward, his face dark. I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't prove it. David laid out 3 more files. TechCorp Solutions. Derek leaked confidential strategy to their competitor. You lost a $2 million annual contract. Midwest Manufacturing. Derek deliberately missed deadlines. $1.5 million in revenue. Harbor Investments. Derek gave them bad advice. Cost them $5 million in losses. They sued. You settled for $1.2 million. He looked at me. Total damage. $6.5 million in lost revenue. Derek wasn't just stealing from you. He was destroying the company from the inside so it would be easier to sell. I felt like I'd been punched. He poisoned my company, I whispered. Folder 3 black. Dr. James Caldwell. David said. He's done this before. 3 times. He spread out 3 case summaries. Margaret Hastings, 2018, 78 years old, $10 million estate. Caldwell fabricated a dementia diagnosis. Her nephew got power of attorney, transferred everything. She was placed in assisted living, died a year later. Caldwell received $40,000. Howard Bennett, 2020, 82, $8 million estate. Caldwell fabricated cognitive decline. Daughter took control, sold his business for $3 million worth $8. Bennett passed away in 2021. Caldwell got $50,000. Patricia Donovan, 2022, 74, $15 million. Caldwell tried the same thing, but Patricia's granddaughter is a lawyer. She fought back, exposed the fraud. Case was settled, records sealed. Caldwell still walked away with $75,000. Sarah spoke. 2 medical board complaints, both dismissed. Lack of evidence. I looked at David. Patricia Donovan, she's alive. Yes, and she's willing to testify. I closed the folder. My hands were shaking. 3 elderly people, stripped of everything. 2 of them gone. I was going to be number 4. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the oak tree swayed in the June breeze. $47 million. A mob debt. Corporate sabotage. A doctor who'd been stealing from the elderly for years. And my daughter was in the middle of it. I turned back. I need all of this ready for tomorrow night, I said. Can you do that? David nodded. Already done. The question is, are you ready to destroy your daughter's wedding? I didn't hesitate. Yes. The rehearsal dinner was flawless. White tablecloths, champagne, a string quartet playing softly in the corner of Lakeview Country Club. I sat at the head table smiling while Derek raised his glass. To Catherine Morrison. He said, his voice warm. The incredible woman who raised my beautiful bride. Everyone applauded. I wanted to throw my glass at him. Rachel sat beside him, pale, barely touching her food. She wouldn't look at me. Derek leaned closer to me, his hand on my shoulder. You look tired, Catherine. Big day tomorrow. Make sure you get some rest. I smiled. I will. At 8:30, a man walked through the door. Tall, shaved head, expensive suit. I recognized him from David's photos. Dmitry Volkov. He crossed the room and stopped beside Derek. Leaned down, whispered something. Derek's face went white. Dmitry straightened and spoke loud enough for the tables around us to hear. Mr. Pierce, we need to discuss your account. June 30th is very soon. Derek stood quickly. Not here, please. Dmitry smiled, cold, empty. Then where and when? He turned and walked out. Rachel grabbed Derek's arm. What was that? Nothing, Derek said, his voice shaking. Just a misunderstanding. I watched. I remembered everything. At 10 o'clock, I gathered them in my study. Catherine, Sarah, David, George, Rosa. David pulled up a screen and projected the evidence. Photos, bank statements, emails, medical records. Here's the plan, Sarah said. 5 p.m. tomorrow, the ceremony happens. Normal, beautiful. 7 p.m. reception begins. 8:25. Catherine gives her mother of the bride speech. 8:30 to 8:55. The speech becomes an exposé. 3 phases. Derek's sabotage and debt. Dr. Caldwell's pattern. The power of attorney trap. 9 p.m. exactly. Emergency injunction activates. All accounts frozen. Transfer blocked. 9:05, police arrest Derek and Caldwell. George leaned forward. What about Rachel? I looked at him. I don't know if she's a victim or part of it, but I can't let that stop me. Rosa spoke quietly from the corner. Miss Catherine, I need to tell you something. We all turned. Last week, she said, her voice trembling, I heard them in the kitchen, Rachel and Derek. Rachel said, I can't do this to her. Derek said, it's too late to back out now. My throat tightened. Why didn't you tell me? Rosa's eyes filled with tears. I was afraid. I thought maybe I'd heard wrong. I crossed the room and hugged her. It's okay. You're telling me now. Sarah cleared her throat. All systems are ready. Patricia Donovan will testify via video link. Officers will be positioned as wedding guests. Plain clothes. No one will know until we're ready. David spoke. One more thing. The transfer doesn't execute at midnight. It executes at 9 p.m., automated. We have 35 minutes from the moment Catherine starts her speech until the money disappears forever. 35 minutes. I looked around the room. These people, my lawyer, my investigator, my oldest friend, my housekeeper were risking everything to help me. If we do this, I said, there's no going back. Rachel's wedding will be destroyed. My relationship with my daughter will still exist, David said. If she's innocent, she'll understand. If she's not, you'll know. I nodded slowly. Sarah stood. It's 1:47 a.m. We reconvene at the estate at noon tomorrow for final prep. Catherine, you need sleep. I won't sleep. Try. They filed out one by one. George squeezed my shoulder. Rosa hugged me again. David nodded once. Sarah was the last to leave. She paused at the door. 16 hours, she said. You'll either save everything or lose it all. I know. She left. I stood alone in the study, staring at Thomas's photograph on the desk. Tomorrow, I whispered, we go to war. I woke at dawn, dressed in silence, and stared at the champagne gold gown hanging on my door. It looked like armor. 6 o'clock. I showered, applied makeup with steady hands, rehearsed the speech in my head. Not the one I'd written, the one I'd memorized. At 7, Rosa brought coffee and squeezed my hand without a word. At 9, the hair and makeup artist arrived. I smiled, laughed, acted like a mother whose daughter was getting married. At 11, Rachel knocked. She stood in the doorway wearing her white gown lace and silk and everything a bride should be. Her eyes were red. Mom, can I talk to you? Of course, sweetheart. She stepped inside and closed the door. I just want you to know I love you, no matter what. My heart cracked, but I smiled. I love you too, baby. She hugged me, held on longer than usual, then left. I stood alone in the room and tried not to cry. At noon, my phone buzzed. David. All evidence compiled. Police confirmed. Patricia Donovan live link ready. You're good to go. At 1, George texted, injunction filed sealed until 9 p.m., judge approved. At 3, guests began arriving. 180 people. High society, clients, board members, people who'd known Thomas, people who'd watched me build Morrison Strategic from the ashes. At 4:30, I spotted him, Dmitry Volkov, standing near the back, watching Derek like a hawk watches prey. At 5 o'clock, the ceremony began. The oak tree stood in the center of the lawn, its branches spreading wide over the rows of white chairs. Thomas had planted it in 1995, the year we founded the company, the year everything started. Now Rachel would marry beneath it. The string quartet played. Guests stood. Rachel appeared at the end of the aisle, her veil trailing behind her. There was no father to walk her down, just me. I took her arm. She looked at me, tears streaming. I'm so glad you're here, she whispered. I wouldn't miss this, I said. We walked together, slowly, past the guests, past George, who nodded once, past Sarah, whose face was calm, past David, who stood near the back watching. We reached the oak tree. Derek stood beneath it, smiling, sweating. The officiant spoke. Who gives this woman to be married? I looked at Rachel, then at Derek, then at the guests. I do, I said, her father and I. Rachel turned and hugged me. I held her, then let go. She stepped forward, took Derek's hand. I sat in the front row and watched them exchange vows, watched Derek stumble over his words, watched Rachel's hands tremble. The officiant pronounced them married. Everyone applauded. I didn't. The reception began at 7. White tent, chandeliers, a band playing softly. The first dance. Rachel and Derek stepped onto the floor. The band began. At last, my love has come along. Etta James. The same song Thomas and I had danced to at our wedding, 41 years ago. I watched them sway, watched Derek hold her too tight, watched Rachel close her eyes, and I felt Thomas beside me. I'm doing this for you, I thought. For us, for her. The song ended. The guests applauded. The MC stepped forward, microphone in hand. And now the mother of the bride will say a few words. I stood, smoothed my gown, walked to the podium. My written speech was in my hand, 3 pages handwritten full of stories about love and partnership and trust. I set it down on the podium, and I didn't look at it. Good evening, everyone. My voice was steady, warm. I looked out at the faces beneath the white tent, friends, colleagues, family, people who'd known me for decades. Thank you for celebrating this beautiful day with us. I smiled. 25 years ago, I held Rachel in my arms for the first time. She was 7 pounds, 3 ounces. She had Thomas's eyes, and she screamed like she was furious at the world for making her wait so long to arrive. Soft laughter rippled through the crowd. I remember her first day of school, kindergarten. She cried when I left. I cried in the car. But when I picked her up that afternoon, she was smiling. She'd made 3 friends and announced she was going to be president someday. More laughter. Rachel was smiling now, her eyes wet. I remember her college graduation, Columbia, business degree, summa cum laude. Thomas would have been so proud. I paused, let the silence sit. And I remember the day she joined Morrison Strategic Consulting. She started at the bottom, entry-level analyst, no special treatment. She worked harder than anyone. She earned every promotion, every success. I looked at Rachel. She has been my greatest joy, my proudest achievement. Rachel wiped her eyes. The guests smiled. A few dabbed at their own tears. Derek reached for Rachel's hand, squeezed it, smiled at me. I smiled back. Then I stopped smiling. Marriage, I said, is built on trust, partnership, honesty. The tent went quieter. 15 years ago, my husband Thomas died. I stood at his grave with Rachel beside me, and I made a promise. I would protect our family, our legacy, our company. I paused. This week I discovered that promise was being tested. The room went silent. Derek's smile froze. I looked toward the back of the tent and nodded. David Reyes stood near the AV booth. He pressed a button. A screen lowered behind me. I turned back to the guests. I'd like to share something with you. The screen lit up. An email projected 10 feet high. From Derek Pierce to Martin Blackwell, CEO, Stratton Advisory Subject, Morrison Client List, plus Q1 Financials date, April 14th, 2024. Body files attached. Remaining data available upon acquisition confirmation. Wire $500,000 to Cascade Holdings account per our agreement. DP. Gasps. Heads turned toward Derek. Board members stood. George Matthews's face was dark. 2 of our senior partners were staring at Derek like they'd never seen him before. Derek stood. Catherine, what are you? Sit down, Derek. My voice didn't rise, didn't waver. He stared at me. Sit down. He sat. I turned back to the guests. Derek Pierce sold our client list to our competitor. He sold our financial records, our strategies, everything we've built over 30 years. He sold it to Stratton Advisory for $500,000. The tent erupted. Whispers, gasps. Someone said, "Oh my God." Rachel stood. Her face was white. What? I looked at her. My daughter, my beautiful, brilliant, betrayed daughter. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I said quietly. But you need to know the truth. I clicked the remote in my hand. The next slide appeared. A bank statement. A very large number. $2,500,000 America Serikat. I let them stare at it for 3 seconds. Then I spoke. Derek Pierce sold my company to pay off a debt, $2.5 million, and that was just the beginning. I clicked the remote again. Another slide, another number, another truth. This, I said, looking at Derek, is why you're marrying my daughter. Rachel's hands went to her mouth. Derek lunged toward the exit. Security 2 men I'd hired dressed as guests blocked his path. I turned back to the microphone. Let me tell you, I said exactly who Derek Pierce is. Derek Pierce. I said, is not who you think he is. The screen changed. A table appeared, 3 rows, 3 company names, $3 amounts in red. I didn't read the details aloud. I didn't need to. I turned to table 6, where Michael Torres, CEO of Tech Corp Solutions, sat with his wife. His jaw was tight. He knew exactly what he was looking at. Michael, I said quietly, you walked away from us in January. You told George it was a strategic decision. But it wasn't, was it? Michael's face darkened. He looked at Derek. No, he said, it wasn't. I nodded and turned to table 9. Margaret Fletcher, Midwest Manufacturing. You terminated our contract in February. You said we missed deadlines. Margaret stood slowly, her hands shaking. We didn't miss them, she said, her voice breaking. You sabotaged them. She pointed at Derek. You cost me my job. The tent erupted in whispers. Derek tried to stand. Security forced him back down. I looked at George Matthews. George verified every case. Over 18 months, Derek Pierce systematically destroyed Morrison Consulting's reputation. The total financial loss was $7.7 million. Derek was shaking now. His hands gripped the edge of the table. Why? Someone shouted from the back. I turned to the screen. Let me show you. A bank statement appeared. Derek's name at the top. A wire transfer $300,000 to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Derek owes $2.5 million to a man named Victor Kozlov. I paused. Victor Kozlov runs an organized crime network in New York. Derek borrowed money for illegal gambling. He couldn't pay it back. The next slide showed 3 photographs Derek meeting a bald man in a dark suit outside a Manhattan hotel. April, May, June. This man is Dmitry Volkov. He works for Kozlov. The deadline to repay the debt is June 30th, 15 days from now. I looked toward the back of the tent. Dmitry Volkov was standing near the exit, arms crossed, watching Derek with cold, empty eyes. Several guests turned to look. A woman gasped. Derek saw him. His face crumpled. Derek needed money, I said. Fast, so he created a plan. The screen changed. A corporate filing document appeared. Cascade Holdings, LLC. Incorporated March 10, 2024, Delaware. Partners Derek Pierce, Rachel Morrison. Rachel stared at the screen, her face drained of color. Derek told Rachel this was estate planning, a symbolic 30% transfer to help with taxes. I clicked to the next image. A financial breakdown filled the screen. Morrison Consulting, $32 million. Thomas Morrison Memorial Fund, $15 million. Total, $47 million. But the real plan was to transfer everything $47 million into Cascade Holdings. From there, the money would move offshore. By Tuesday morning, Derek, Rachel, and the money would be gone. The tent went silent. I looked at my daughter. Rachel didn't know. She signed documents she thought were helping me. She believed Derek when he said I was getting older, that I needed protection. Rachel stood, tears streaming down her face. Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was $47 million. Derek told me it was just 30%. Shut up, Rachel, Derek screamed. Security stepped closer. Derek lunged toward the exit. They grabbed his arms and forced him back into his seat. I looked at Rachel. I know, sweetheart. Then I turned back to the screen. But Derek didn't do this alone. He had help. From someone I trusted even more than I trusted him. The image changed. A man in a white coat appeared standing in a medical office. Dr. James Caldwell has been part of this plan from the very beginning. And what he did is far worse than anything Derek could have imagined. I paused. Let me show you. Dr. James Caldwell stood up from table 12, briefcase in hand, and moved toward the tent exit. Security, I said calmly. 2 men in dark suits stepped in front of the entrance. Caldwell froze. I turned back to the screen. Dr. James Caldwell has been our family neurologist for 5 years. He treated my husband Thomas before he passed away. He guided me through the worst year of my life. I trusted him completely. The screen displayed a medical license. Dr. James Caldwell, MD Neurology, Connecticut license number 47,829. In March of this year, Dr. Caldwell began documenting incidents of my so-called cognitive decline. 5 dates appeared on the screen: March 15th, April 3rd, April 20th, May 8th, May 30th. I didn't read them aloud. I didn't need to. 5 incidents, 5 fabricated reports. None of them happened. I held up a folder. I have my assistant's calendar. I have recordings of every board meeting. I have witness statements. I was never late. I was never confused. I was never impaired. Whispers spread through the tent. George Matthews stood from table 4. I verified every date. He said, his voice steady. Catherine was present, sharp, focused. There was no decline. I nodded. George sat down. Dr. Caldwell isn't new to this, I said. He's done it before. The screen changed. 3 names appeared. Margaret Hastings, Howard Bennett, Patricia Donovan. I let the names sit. 3 elderly victims, 3 fabricated diagnoses, 3 families destroyed. I clicked to the next slide. A timeline appeared. 2018, Margaret Hastings, 78. Estate $10 million. Caldwell paid $40,000. 2020, Howard Bennett, 82. Estate $8 million. Caldwell paid $50,000. 2022, Patricia Donovan, 74. Estate $15 million. Caldwell paid $75,000. Margaret died in a nursing home in 2019. Howard died in 2021. Patricia survived because her granddaughter fought back. I paused. Patricia Donovan is still alive, and she is here tonight. The screen switched to a live video feed. Patricia Donovan, 75 years old, silver hair, sharp eyes, sat in a well-lit living room. My name is Patricia Donovan, she said, her voice steady. Dr. Caldwell told my son I was no longer competent. He lied. He fabricated test results. He forged assessments. She leaned forward. He tried to lock me away so my son could take my money and pay him his fee. If my granddaughter had not fought for me, if she had not hired investigators, I would be in a nursing home right now. She looked directly into the camera. Catherine Morrison, don't let him do this to you. The video ended. Silence. Dr. Caldwell turned and bolted toward the side exit. Security grabbed him by both arms. He struggled. They held him. The tent erupted. Guests stood. Some shouted. Others stared in shock. I raised my hand. The room quieted. In April 2024, Cascade Holdings paid Dr. Caldwell $75,000, the exact same amount he received from Patricia Donovan's son in 2022. A bank statement appeared on the screen. The wire transfer, April 15, 2024, $75,000. I turned to face Caldwell directly. You plan to declare me incompetent on Monday. By Wednesday, I would lose everything. By Christmas, you had arranged for me to be transferred to Evergreen Manor. I paused. The same facility where Margaret Hastings died. Caldwell's face went pale. He looked at the floor. I turned back to the audience. Dr. Caldwell has stolen from the elderly 3 times. He destroyed Margaret's family. He destroyed Howard's legacy. He almost destroyed Patricia's life. I let that settle. And I was almost number 4. A woman at table 8 stood. She was older, perhaps 70. Her voice trembled. My sister went through this. Her doctor said she had dementia. Her son took everything. She died 6 months later. She pointed at Caldwell. He didn't do it alone. There are more of them. Other voices rose, murmurs, anger. I raised my hand again. Tonight we stop one of them. I turned back to the screen. But the worst part wasn't the money. It wasn't even the lies. I paused. It was page 7. Page 7. I repeated of the amended power of attorney that Rachel was supposed to ask me to sign tonight. The screen displayed the document. David zoomed in on section 4.3, Emergency Health Proxy Amendment. In the event of cognitive impairment as certified by Dr. James Caldwell, all corporate voting rights, fiduciary control, and trust administration transfer immediately to Rachel Morrison, acting Chief Executive Officer with full authority to execute sales, mergers, asset liquidations, or corporate dissolutions without further consent or oversight. I let the words sit. This clause was hidden in what Derek called wedding gift paperwork. It looked like a symbolic 30% ownership transfer to Rachel, but buried in the fine print was this. If I signed tonight and Caldwell filed his fraudulent assessment on Monday, I would lose 100% control by Wednesday. Rachel stood up, tears streaming down her face. Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it said that. Derek told me it was just 30%. Shut up, Rachel! Derek shouted. I looked at my daughter. I know, sweetheart. I glanced at my watch, 8:58. The asset transfer is scheduled to execute automatically at 9 o'clock tonight, in 2 minutes. Guests around the tent checked their watches. The room went silent. $47 million, my company. My trust, my life's work will vanish into a Cayman account controlled by Cascade Holdings. Derek lunged toward the exit. Security tackled him to the ground and pinned his arms behind his back. I turned toward the crowd. Counselor, Sarah Goldman stood up from table 6. At the back of the tent, Judge Harold Preston, 68 years old, retired Connecticut Superior Court, stood as well. Sarah spoke clearly. Your Honor, the emergency injunction is now in effect. All accounts have been frozen. The clock on the screen changed. 9 o'clock. The projection switched to a new message in bold red letters. Transfer blocked, court order in effect. The tent erupted in whispers. I raised my hand and the room fell silent again. 4 men in dark suits stepped forward from different tables. They were plainclothes police officers positioned as wedding guests. The first officer approached Derek. Derek Pierce, you are under arrest for wire fraud, corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, and conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse. He pulled Derek to his feet and handcuffed him. Derek twisted against the cuffs, shouting, "You can't do this. You can't do this to me." The second officer walked to Dr. Caldwell. Dr. James Caldwell, you are under arrest for fraud, falsifying medical records, conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse, and medical malpractice. Caldwell said nothing. He stared at the ground as the officer handcuffed him. Then Dmitry Volkov stood up from table 15. He walked slowly to Derek, leaned down, and whispered in his ear, "You have 10 days left." Then he turned and walked out of the tent. Derek went pale. The officers began leading Derek and Caldwell toward the exit. Derek was still shouting. Caldwell walked in silence, his head down. I stood at the podium and watched them go. The tent was silent except for one sound. Rachel. She collapsed. Her white wedding dress pooled around her on the floor. Her hands covered her face. Her shoulders shook. Rosa Mendez ran forward and caught her before she hit the ground. She knelt beside Rachel, one hand on her back, whispering something I couldn't hear. I turned off the microphone. The guests sat frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. George Matthews stood up slowly from his table, his face pale. Sarah remained standing, her hand still holding a folder of legal documents. David Reyes stepped back from the projection screen, his arms crossed. I looked at Derek and Dr. Caldwell one last time as the officers led them through the tent entrance. Derek was still shouting. Caldwell's face was blank. Then I looked at my daughter. Rachel was still on the floor, Rosa's arms around her. I stepped down from the podium, and I walked toward her. If you're still here with me, comment "still here," so I know you're standing with me. And tell me honestly, if you were on that stage with $47 million at stake and your child in front of you, would you expose the truth or stay silent to protect your family? Before we continue, please note that some elements in the next part are dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this isn't for you, you're free to stop here. Mom. Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. I knelt beside her on the grass, my gold dress spreading around us. Rosa stepped back, giving us space. Rachel's face was streaked with tears. Her white wedding dress was wrinkled and stained with dirt. I didn't know about the debt, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know about the victims. I didn't know page 7 said 100%. I looked at her carefully. What did you know? She trembled. I knew Derek wanted me to convince you to sign something. He said it was estate planning. He said you were getting older, that it was time to transfer leadership. He said it was normal. And the cognitive decline, she sobbed. He said you were showing signs. He said Dr. Caldwell was worried. He said we needed to protect you before you made a mistake that hurt the company. Did you believe him? She looked up, her eyes red. I wanted to. You've worked so hard, Mom. I thought maybe you were tired. Maybe you really did need help, and I was so angry. Angry at what? At you. Because you chose the company over everything, over me, over your own life. I wanted you to stop. I wanted you to rest. I wanted my mother back. Tears ran down my face. Oh, Rachel. But I didn't want this. I swear I didn't want this. I believe you. Do you really? I paused. I want to. By 10 o'clock, the guests began to leave. Some hugged me. Some couldn't meet my eyes. George Matthews squeezed my shoulder. You saved the company. You did it the right way. 3 board members stopped to pledge their support. Emergency meeting Monday morning. Derek's position is terminated immediately. A few guests slipped out, quietly embarrassed. An elderly woman, one of my oldest clients, took my hand. My sister went through this, she said softly. Her son took everything. Thank you for fighting. I nodded, too tired to speak. At 11 o'clock, we gathered in my study. Sarah, David, George, and Rosa sat around the oak table. The war room one last time. Sarah spoke first. The injunction is solid. Derek and Caldwell are both in custody. Bail hearing is Monday morning. David leaned forward. Cascade's accounts are frozen. The FBI is taking over the investigation into Kozlov's network. Derek's debt makes this a federal case now. George looked at me. What about Rachel? I folded my hands. She won't be charged. She was manipulated. Sarah hesitated. She signed the incorporation documents for Cascade Holdings. She's my daughter, I said firmly. And she's a victim too. David's voice was gentle. Even if she didn't know everything, she knew something. You need to be prepared for that. I met his eyes. I am. Rosa stood and walked to the cabinet. She poured a glass of water and set it in front of me. What do you need? I looked at her, this woman who had kept my house, kept my secrets, kept my daughter safe tonight. Sleep, I said quietly, and maybe a year alone on an island. At midnight, I climbed the stairs. I was still wearing the gold dress. My feet ached. My mind was numb. I opened the door to my bedroom. Rachel was sitting on my bed, still in her white wedding dress. She looked up when I entered. Can we talk? She whispered. I sat down beside her. Tomorrow, I said. Tonight we just sit. So we did. We sat side by side on the edge of my bed, mother and daughter in our gold and white dresses, and said nothing. Outside, the Morrison estate was silent. The tent was empty. The guests were gone. The evidence was locked away. Derek and Dr. Caldwell were in custody, and I had 47 million reasons to be grateful. But all I felt was tired. Sunday morning came in gray and cold. I woke at dawn still wearing the gold dress. Rachel was asleep in the chair beside my bed, her wedding dress wrinkled and stained with grass. I covered her with a blanket, then went downstairs. At 8 o'clock, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Rachel appeared in the doorway wearing borrowed jeans and a t-shirt from her old room. Her hair was pulled back. Her eyes were red. We sat in the study with coffee between us. Tell me everything, I said. From the beginning. She took a breath. I met Derek in 2022. He was charming, ambitious. He made me feel seen. I nodded. He started isolating me. He'd say things like, your mother doesn't value you. You're doing all the work. She should retire. When did it escalate? 2023, he proposed. And he started talking about succession planning. He said you were working too hard, that it was time for me to take over. And Caldwell, early 2024, Derek started raising concerns. He said Caldwell was worried about you. He gave me examples. He said you repeated yourself, that you forgot George's birthday. I set down my coffee. In March, Derek asked me to sign incorporation documents for Cascade Holdings. He said it was estate planning, tax purposes. Go on. In April, he told me Caldwell recommended temporary oversight to protect you. And in May, Rachel's voice cracked. I overheard a phone call. Derek said, once the old woman's signs were clear. I confronted him. He said he was protecting you. He asked if I wanted you to lose everything. What did you say? I tried to pull out. In June, I told him I couldn't do it, and he said it was too late, that you'd find out I signed the Cascade documents, that you'd never forgive me, that I'd lose you either way. Her hands shook. I felt trapped. I looked at her carefully. Why didn't you come to me? I was ashamed. I'd already signed things, and part of me thought maybe he was right. Maybe you were tired. Maybe I was helping you. What about the wedding? I thought if I went through with it, everything would be okay. Derek said after the wedding, he'd drop all of this. She looked up. He lied. At 10 o'clock, Rosa knocked on the door. She stepped inside, holding a piece of paper. Mrs. Catherine, I need to tell you this. She handed me the note. It was handwritten, dated June 8, 2024, the day of the conspiracy at the boutique. I was cleaning Derek's office, Rosa said quietly. I found this on his desk. I didn't understand it then. The note read, Transfer 9 p.m. Saturday, confirm Cayman routing. Caldwell assessment 8 a.m. Monday. Place an EM by August, VP. EM, I asked. Sarah Goldman walked in just then. Evergreen Manor, she said. The assisted living facility. Rachel stared at the note. He really was going to do it. Rosa looked at me. I'm sorry I didn't bring it sooner. You brought it now, I said. That's what matters. At 11 o'clock, George Matthews arrived. He carried a thick folder. Catherine, he said, I've been investigating Derek for 6 months. He opened the folder. Inside were emails from clients complaining about Derek's behavior, emails Rachel had ignored. Financial discrepancies, $5,000 to $10,000 transfers to Derek's personal account. Meeting minutes where Derek undermined me in front of the board. One line stood out. She's losing her edge. It's time for new leadership. George looked at me. I tried to report this to the board. Rachel blocked me. Rachel turned to him. I'm sorry, I didn't want to believe you. George nodded. I should have come to you directly. We all made mistakes, I said. The three of them sat with me in silence, Rachel, Rosa, George, each carrying their own weight. Finally, Rachel spoke. What happens to me now? I looked at my daughter. 35 years old, talented, broken. That, I said, depends on you. 6 months passed. Winter came to Greenwich, blanketing the Morrison estate in white. The oak tree Thomas planted stood bare against the December sky. Derek Pierce was sentenced on December 15th. 8 convictions: wire fraud, corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse and extortion. 12 years in federal prison. $5 million in fines money he would never have. The FBI had seized his assets, $120,000. They applied it to his Kozlov debt. He still owed $2.38 million. Dmitry Volkov testified for immunity. Victor Kozlov was facing separate charges. In court, Derek looked at me one last time. You destroyed my life. I met his eyes. No, you destroyed your own. Dr. James Caldwell's medical license was permanently revoked in October by the Connecticut Medical Board. On December 20th, he was sentenced to 10 years in state prison. 6 convictions: fraud, falsifying medical records, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, and medical malpractice. Civil lawsuits followed. Margaret Hastings' estate, Howard Bennett's daughter, Patricia Donovan. Together they sought $12 million in damages. Caldwell's assets were liquidated. He filed for bankruptcy. After the press covered the trial, 3 more victims came forward. Rachel was not charged. The prosecutors determined she had been manipulated. She resigned as chief operating officer on June 20th. She repaid $75,000 to Morrison Consulting her stake in Cascade Holdings. She started therapy, twice a week with Dr. Laura Simmons, a specialist in psychological trauma. I didn't ask where she went. She didn't tell me. Morrison Consulting stabilized. In September, I hired Jennifer Park, a former vice president at Deloitte, as the new chief operating officer. She was 42 sharp and had no connection to Derek or Rachel. George Matthews was promoted to chairman of the board. We added 3 independent directors. 2 of the clients we'd lost, Midwest Manufacturing and Harbor Investments, returned. Both apologized. Our revenue forecast for 2025 was $28 million. We were climbing back from the $22 million low we'd hit in June. We implemented new policies, mandatory audits, dual signature authority on all major transactions, and protections for whistleblowers. The company Thomas built was standing again. In August, I underwent an independent cognitive evaluation. Dr. Stephen Wallace, a neurologist at Yale, conducted the assessment over 2 days. His report was clear. No evidence of cognitive impairment. Memory, executive function, and decision-making capacity are exceptionally strong. Cognitive age, 45 to 50. The report was submitted to the court, the medical board, and Morrison's board of directors. Dr. Wallace shook my hand at the end. You're sharper than most 30-year-olds I've tested. I thought I would feel victorious. Mostly I just felt tired. I declined interview requests, 60 Minutes, The Wall Street Journal, Forbes. I had nothing left to say. I had quiet dinners with Rosa, George, and David. We didn't talk about Derek or Caldwell. We talked about the weather, the company's small things. In October, Patricia Donovan visited. We had tea in the sunroom. "You gave me my voice back," she said. I held her hand across the table. On December 15th, the day Derek was sentenced, I stood alone in Thomas's office. His photograph sat on the desk, the same one from 1995, the day we bought this house. I spoke to him. I kept my promise. I protected everything. I paused, but I lost her. That night, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I stared at the screen. "Mom, it's me. I'm in Boston. I'm trying to get better. Can we talk, Ari?" I sat on the edge of my bed, still holding the phone. Outside, snow was falling again. The oak tree stood in the yard, bare branches reaching toward the sky. I typed one word. Yes. Rachel moved to Boston in July. A small apartment in Back Bay. A financial analyst job at a mid-sized firm. Starting over. I knew this from the emails she sent, short, careful messages every few weeks. She didn't call. Not at first. I learned later what her days looked like. She wrote letters she never sent. In one, she said, "Every day I wake up and remember I destroyed my own wedding. I see your face on that stage. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself." She went to work. She went to therapy twice a week with Dr. Simmons. She attended a support group for victims of financial abuse, though her role there was complicated. She was both victim and listener. Dr. Simmons told her something that stayed with her. "You were both victim and participant. Both can be true. Healing means accepting both." The most painful realization came in October. I wanted control. Derek gave me an excuse to take it. The phone calls started slowly. August, 5 minutes. Weather, work, nothing deep. September, 10 minutes. Rachel mentioned therapy. October, 20 minutes. She cried. She apologized again. I said, "I know." November, 30 minutes. We laughed briefly about the time Thomas burned the Thanksgiving turkey in 2003. December, 45 minutes. Rachel asked, "Do you hate me?" I paused for a long time. "No, I'm just sad." On December 15th, Rachel wrote a letter. 5 pages, handwritten. She detailed Derek's isolation tactics, how he made her feel seen when I had made her feel invisible, how she rationalized her betrayal. One passage broke me. "I wanted to prove I could do it without you. I spent my whole life in your shadow. You were the hero who saved the company after Dad died. I was just there. I wanted to be seen. Derek made me feel seen. I was wrong. And then, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I see you now. I see what you sacrificed. I see what I almost destroyed. I'm sorry." She mailed it on December 16th. I received it on December 20th. I read it 3 times. Then I sat in Thomas's office and cried. I wrote back, 2 pages. "Rachel, you were never in my shadow. You were my light. I'm sorry I made you feel invisible. I was so focused on saving the company I forgot to save us. You made terrible choices. So did I. I chose work over presence, control over trust. I pushed you away without realizing it. Derek exploited that, but the crack was already there. I forgive you. I don't know if we can go back, but maybe we can move forward together. I love you. I always have, Mom." I mailed it on December 22nd. Rachel received my letter on Christmas Eve. She told me later she cried for an hour. At 10 o'clock that night, she texted, "Thank you." On New Year's Eve, another text came. "Mom, can I come home just one day? I want to see the oak tree." I stared at the message for 10 minutes. Outside, the estate was quiet. The oak tree stood bare in the yard, its branches reaching toward the sky. I thought about Thomas. I thought about the 15 years I'd spent building something he started. I thought about the daughter I'd almost lost. I thought about the crack that was already there. Finally, I typed 2 words, "Come home." 1 year after the wedding that never was, I sat in Thomas's office watching the oak tree sway in the summer wind. June 15th, 2025, 10 o'clock in the morning. Morrison Consulting's revenue was projected to hit $30 million this year, nearly a full recovery. Jennifer Park was thriving as chief operating officer. The board was strong, loyal, and vigilant. Derek Pierce had 11 years left in federal prison. Dr. Caldwell had 9.5 years left in state prison, with 4 civil lawsuits still pending. Rachel was still in Boston. She'd been promoted to senior analyst. She was still in therapy. I looked at Thomas's photograph on the desk. "I saved everything," I said. but I'm so tired. At 10:30, an express envelope arrived. Handwritten. Postmarked June 14th, 2025. 3 pages. Mom, 1 year ago today, you stood on that stage and chose truth over comfort. You chose justice over family, and you saved yourself. I've spent this year trying to become someone you could be proud of. I don't know if I've made it, but I'm better than I was. I'm seeing someone. His name is Andrew Collins. He's a high school history teacher. He's kind and patient. He knows everything about last year. He's still here. I told him about you, about Dad, about the oak tree. He wants to meet you, if you're ready. I'm not asking to come back to Morrison Consulting. I'm not asking for full forgiveness. I'm just asking for coffee, 1 hour, at the diner on Route 1 where you met David Reyes. I'll be there Saturday, June 21st at 10 a.m. If you don't come, I'll understand, but I hope you will. I love you. I'm sorry it took losing everything to realize how much you mattered. Rachel. At 2 o'clock, I walked to the oak tree and sat beneath it. I remembered Thomas proposing here in 1983, Rachel's 10th birthday party in 1999, scattering Thomas's ashes in 2009. What should I do? I asked him. Should I let her back in? What if she hurts me again? The wind rustled the leaves. No answer, but peace. David Reyes arrived unannounced at 2:30. Heard today was the anniversary, he said. Wanted to check on you. I showed him Rachel's letter. What do you want to do? He asked. I don't know, I'm afraid. Of what? Of hope. At 6 o'clock, I wrote a short note. Rachel, I'll be at that diner. 10 a.m. I'll bring 2 cups of coffee and 35 years of love. See you Saturday, Mom. I sent it express mail. At 9 o'clock, I updated my will. Jennifer Park was named Successor Chief Executive Officer. The trust was restructured. Rachel was a conditional beneficiary, but she wouldn't have access until she was 45 10 years from now. I added one final instruction. If I die, tell Rachel I forgave her. Tell her I was proud of who she became, not who she was. Saturday morning came. I drove to the diner on Route 1 and parked in the same spot where I'd sat 1 year ago the night I hired David Reyes. That night I had been planning for war. Today I was planning for a truce. At 9:58, Rachel's car pulled into the lot. She stepped out. She was wearing jeans and a simple blue sweater. Her hair was shorter. She looked older, steadier. She saw me standing by my car. She hesitated. I opened my arms. Rachel ran. We stood there in the parking lot, holding each other, 2 women who had lost everything and found themselves. She was crying. So was I. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, I said. I know. We went inside. We ordered coffee. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about Andrew, about her job, about therapy, about the letters she'd written and never sent. I told her about the company, about the trial, about the nights I sat in Thomas's office and talked to his photograph. We didn't fix everything. We couldn't. But we started. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined, but it was the ending I chose. Looking back at my story, I see a woman who almost lost everything not to thieves in the night, but to the people closest to her heart. Family drama stories like mine aren't just about betrayal. They're about the silent cracks we ignore until they break us. Grandma's stories often carry wisdom, but mine carries a warning. Don't sacrifice presence for success the way I did. My biggest mistake wasn't trusting Derek or Dr. Caldwell. It was working so hard to build a legacy that I forgot to build a relationship with my daughter. I chose board meetings over birthday dinners, quarterly reports over quiet conversations. Rachel didn't betray me because she was evil. She betrayed me because she felt invisible. And I made her that way. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my shoes, the CEO, the provider, the protector, please don't make my mistake. Your children don't need your empire. They need you. Family drama stories teach us that ambition without attention creates distance, and distance creates opportunity for manipulation. Grandma stories like mine should teach love, not loss, but sometimes we learn through pain. I've heard countless family drama stories from others who lost everything to fraud. But what haunts me most is knowing I created the wound Derek exploited. Grandma's stories are supposed to end with wisdom passed down through generations. Mine ends with a hard truth. You can't control people into loving you. You can only show up, stay present, and choose them every single day. I believe God gives us second chances, not because we deserve them, but because grace is unearned. I got mine on a parking lot on Route 1 holding my daughter while we both cried. But not everyone gets that. Don't wait for a crisis to choose your family. Choose wisely. Choose love. Choose presence. Because you can't get time back. Thank you for walking this entire journey with me to the very end. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if you found yourself in my position? Standing on that stage with $47 million at stake and your daughter's future hanging in the balance, would you have fought? Or would you have stayed silent? I'm genuinely curious about your perspective. If this story resonated with you, if it made you reflect on trust, forgiveness, or the price of ambition, I'd be grateful if you subscribed so you won't miss what I share next. A gentle reminder, while I drew inspiration from real issues surrounding elder financial abuse and corporate fraud, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this type of content isn't what you're looking for, feel free to explore other videos that better suit your interests. Thank you again for listening to my story.